Hey, this is Neil's Own Dynasty. Please like, share, subscribe. Be kind, helpful, grateful. Buy yourself some silver, some platinum, some crystallized osmium. Get a couple cats, help take care of rodents. Uh, get a dog to help take care of outside bigger rodents. But anyhow, that's not what this is about. This is about me saying that South Africa is going to lose its GDP to West Africa. And I'm not a dumbass. I know what I'm talking about. All these people that think that South Africa is the cat's meow got bad news for you, bro. That's old school. That's yesterday. You're betting on a dead horse. Here's the facts. Brought to you by Neil's on Dynasty. Because everyone knows Neil knows. Here's the facts to prove what I've been saying. Finally, the actual countries are telling you themselves, so you don't have to believe Neil Hahn. You can believe the 16 West African countries that are going to control Africa because they realize it. They're there. It's their countries. And, well, let's just see what they have to say. It's mostly about Burkina Faso, but there's some real good parts in here.
It's a question that has haunted the continent for decades, asked in places of power and shouted in the streets during protests. The answer for many has always been the same: the West. But Burkina Faso's 35-year-old president, Ibrahim Traoré, isn't buying it. He's decided to flip the script, launching the Treasury Deposit Bank, a move that's being praised as a bold step toward true financial independence from Western control. But is this the start of a new era, or just another chapter in the long, tragic history of Africa's economic struggles? Let's find out.
Black Culture. It's about 2 hours old. Black Culture
Is it financial
Diaries.
independence for Burkina Faso, or just a new way for the elite to get richer?
West Africa, which is made up of 16 countries, and all of these countries today are in the embrace of new colonial exploitation and oppression, and is one of the richest regions in the world.
That's the president of one of the 16 West African countries. Like, this is, you're hearing from one of the guys who's in control of one of the 16 West African countries. He's 100% correct. They are the richest area in the world. Let's see what he has to say about this.
We find everything in West Africa. And in spite of all of these riches, many of our people cannot afford a meal a day. Many of our people have no access to education. They have no access to housing. They have no access to healthcare. How come that we are so poor in the midst of so much riches? Because we no longer own our resources, and our resources are not exploited for the benefit of our people.
Bingo.
It's the question on everyone's mind, and it cuts right to the heart of the issue. On the surface, the creation of the Treasury Deposit Bank sounds like a victory for the Burkinabe people, a way to wrest control from the grip of foreign powers and place it firmly in the hands of the nation. But the West says, let's not get too carried away with the patriotic fervor. And that is indeed true. Let's try to find some logical answers to why this decision should be celebrated. Starting with, who stands to benefit from this move? The idea of a government-owned bank tied directly to the national treasury is a powerful one, especially in a country like Burkina Faso, which has been economically shackled by its colonial past. For decades, the Central Bank of West African States, BCEAO, has served as the de facto central bank for Burkina Faso and several other Francophone countries, operating under the shadow of the Bank of France. This arrangement has been a source of frustration for many, seen as a lingering vestige of colonialism that keeps African nations financially dependent on their former colonizers. By establishing the
Now is the time to take advantage of the power of gold and silver
We'll let you watch
grow
it.
your wealth.
Okay.
Whether you're in
the Treasury Deposit Bank, Traoré is signaling a decisive break from this past. No longer will Burkina Faso have to funnel its financial transactions through a system controlled by external powers. The bank is designed to manage the country's public funds, enabling it to invest in its own infrastructure, education, and health systems without the need to beg for loans from Western institutions that come with strings attached. This move is nothing short of revolutionary. It's a declaration of economic sovereignty, a refusal to be beholden to the financial institutions that have held Africa back for so long.
Burkina Faso's military ruler, Captain Ibrahim Traore, has opened the West African nation's first state-owned bank. The bank, named the Treasury Deposit Bank, was officially opened in the capital Ouagadougou on Friday, August 2nd. Traore said the bank will be closer to the people and will contribute to the country's socio-economic development through a more appropriate method of financing projects and programs. The transitional president urged both the public and the private sectors to make use of this bank to participate in the collective construction of a sovereign economy. The bank's key objectives are three: to provide infrastructure finance.
First off, the key word she said, sovereign. I've used that word several times. I have a video where there's an African president saying, our money is our freedom and our sovereignty, and we're tired of being economic slaves. What she just said is they are no longer economic slaves with the bank they've opened. Big changes coming to West Africa. This bank just opened less than 2 weeks ago. It takes longer than 2 weeks for the world to react. But you're ahead of the game. You know about it. What you do, it's up to you.
Financing to support local businesses' financial needs and to support the development of Burkina Faso's growth sectors.
But here's the problem being raised by critiques. Power, like wealth, tends to accumulate at the top. While the creation of a national bank might sound like a victory for the people, the reality is often far more complicated. In a country where corruption has been pervasive, who's to say that the Treasury Deposit Bank won't become just another tool for the elite to enrich themselves? We've seen it time and time again. The poor get promises, and the rich get richer. Traoré might be sincere in his desire to lift Burkina Faso out of poverty, but sincerity alone isn't enough to change a system that's been rigged for decades. However, it's critical to acknowledge the potential of this move. If managed correctly, the Treasury Deposit Bank could indeed serve as a vehicle for genuine financial independence. The real test will be whether the bank can deliver on its promises, whether it can truly serve the people of Burkina Faso, or whether it will simply become another instrument of oppression, another way to keep the poor in their place while the rich grow fat on the spoils of independence. And now the question is, could Burkina Faso's bold move spark a financial revolution across Africa?
My prayers and hopes are that it works and they don't get sold out, because that'd be a spark for good economic resolution to the crap we have now, in my opinion.
Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. It's a tempting thought, especially for those who have long dreamed of a continent free from the economic shackles of Western domination. But before we start popping champagne corks, let's take a closer look at what's going on here. Traoré's decision to establish the Treasury Deposit Bank is undoubtedly a bold one, and it's already being hailed by some as the beginning of a new era for Africa. For too long, African nations have been forced to play by rules written in Washington, Paris, and London. The IMF, the World Bank, and the Bank of France have dictated the terms of economic engagement, often to the detriment of the very people they claim to be helping. The result has been a cycle of debt, dependency, and despair, a vicious loop that has kept Africa from realizing its full potential. But here's the crux. Burkina Faso's decision to establish the Treasury Deposit Bank is a powerful statement. It's a declaration of independence, a refusal to be beholden to the financial institutions that have held Africa back for so long. And if Traoré's gamble pays off, it could very well inspire other African leaders to take similar steps. This is not just about one country. It's about the entire continent saying, enough is enough, and taking control of its destiny. However, let's not get ahead of ourselves. The road to financial independence is long and treacherous, with plenty of obstacles along the way. From entrenched elites who benefit from the status quo to international powers that have a vested interest in maintaining their influence, the forces arrayed against African financial sovereignty are formidable. But this is a battle worth fighting. Africa cannot afford to remain a pawn in the global economic game. It must become a player in its own right. But here the West is saying, it will need Western help. It can't simply abandon the West. So, is Burkina Faso biting off more than it can chew? It's a question that's been on the lips of skeptics ever since Traoré announced his plans to establish the Treasury Deposit Bank. And it's a valid one. While the idea of financial independence is undeniably appealing, the reality is that going it alone comes with significant risks, risks that could end up doing more harm than good. One of the biggest risks is economic instability. Let's face it, Burkina Faso isn't exactly a financial powerhouse. It's a small, landlocked country with limited resources and a fragile economy. By breaking away from the BCEAO and establishing its central bank, Burkina Faso is essentially throwing itself into uncharted waters. Without the safety net provided by the CFA franc and the BCEAO, the country is vulnerable to economic shocks that could have devastating consequences. And then there's the issue of inflation. If the Treasury Deposit Bank isn't managed properly, it could lead to runaway inflation, a scenario that has played out in other African countries that have tried to assert their economic independence. Zimbabwe is a cautionary tale in this regard. In the early 2000s, the country's economy spiraled into hyperinflation after it abandoned the Zimbabwean dollar and started printing money to cover its debts. The result was economic chaos, with inflation reaching a staggering 89.7 sextillion% per month at its peak. But let's be clear, Burkina Faso is not Zimbabwe, and Traoré is no Mugabe. The parallels are worth considering, but they shouldn't be overblown. If the Treasury Deposit Bank starts printing money recklessly, it could indeed trigger an inflationary spiral. But Traoré seems to understand the stakes, and there's reason to believe he will proceed with caution. His vision for Burkina Faso is not one of reckless abandonment, but of careful, calculated steps towards true financial independence. Another risk is political instability. By challenging the existing financial order, Traoré is making enemies, both at home and abroad. The entrenched elites who have benefited from the status quo are unlikely to give up their power without a fight, and there's no telling how far they might go to protect their interests. Moreover, Western powers have a long history of meddling in African politics, and they're...
Okay, one thing I have to iterate that this guy hasn't told you about is Captain Ibrahim Traoré has already had 5 assassination attempts on him. 5 times they've already tried to assassinate this young man. So the elites are kind of sort of already lost. He's saying there's going to be a battle. The first part of a battle in Africa when you fight the elites is they try to assassinate you. We can go back through history and see all the assassinations that have happened in Africa. That was most likely elites fighting back against the leader and wanting change. They've already tried it 5 times. They've tried to assassinate this gentleman and have a coup in Burkina Faso. All 5 of them have failed miserably. So what he's telling you is not 100% accurate. They're further along in defeating the elites, fighting back, than what he's saying they are. Because usually 3 or 4 assassination attempts and it's over with. But they've tried 5 times already, and they're probably going to try a few more. But he's getting protected by, I believe, Russia and their secret service in Russia, and that's why he's being made to be safe and so far not being allowed to be assassinated. And that is a linchpin key factor that makes this time different. Burkina Faso and Ibrahim Traoré has the backing of Russia. So it's going to succeed. Let's get back to the story.
They're unlikely to sit idly by while one of their former colonies tries to break free from their influence. But let's not underestimate Traoré. He's playing a high-stakes game, and he knows it. But he also knows that the old way of doing things is unsustainable. Burkina Faso cannot continue to rely on a system that was designed to keep it in perpetual servitude. If Traoré could navigate the risks and manage the Treasury Deposit Bank effectively, he could pull off a coup that would change the course of Burkina Faso's history. And if he fails, the consequences could be catastrophic, not just for his country, but for the entire continent. Now the question is Africa ready to break free from the West's economic stranglehold? It's a question that goes far beyond the borders of Burkina Faso. Because while Traore's experiment might be playing out in a small, landlocked country, its implications are being felt across the continent. For decades, Africa has been trapped in a cycle of dependency, forced to rely on Western institutions for financial support and economic development. The IMF, the World Bank, and the former colonial powers have all played a role in shaping the continent's economic landscape, often to the detriment of the very people they claim to be helping. The result has been a continent that is rich in resources but poor in wealth, a continent that has been systematically exploited and kept in a state of perpetual underdevelopment. But Burkina Faso's decision to establish the Treasury Deposit Bank is a direct challenge to this status quo.
Another thing he's not telling you, that I'm going to tell you because I already did a video on it, is they stopped gold exports, and their number one export is gold. And they've stopped gold exports for 1 year because the bank that they just talked about that opened is backing their currency 100% with gold, Burkina Faso gold, because they're very rich in gold, that country is. So that is like their gateway, since they're a landlocked small country in a deprived continent of Africa. They have the unique possibility available to them to be a leader and indeed change the course of Africa, because they are landlocked. They don't have any this, any that, in their terrorism in their nation, blah, 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 corruption, all this other stuff. But they have gold, and now they seem to have a leader that understands those, and the backing of Russia to keep him from being assassinated. Those appear to be the key factors that will make his attempt at changing the future of West Africa is highly successful. That's what I see. Yeah, they are going to face some more problems, but the whole world's changing now. We have BRICS. BRICS has never happened in the history of the world. These people are not part of BRICS. So we have BRICS, and we have the SWIFT system, and now we're going to have this system. It's going to be an interesting future. You guys have a nice Sunday.